Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do a rifle cartridge review on the 6mm Remington. Stay tuned. So back in 1955, two iconic companies, Winchester and Remington, both came out with a 6mm rifle cartridge. Winchester came out with a .243 Winchester, which they simply took a .308 and they necked it down to 6mm. And Remington took the 7x57 Mauser, necked it down to 6mm, and called it the .244 Remington. Both companies had in mind that this would be a dual-purpose cartridge for varmints and also for deer and antelope. The .244 Remington was chambered in the Model 722 Remington, which was one of the predecessors to the Model 700. And of course, the .243 Winchester was chambered in the Model 70 Winchester. .243 Winchester went on to have massive success and is very popular even until this very day. The .244 Remington was kind of a dud. Had a little bit of success, but really it didn't ever match up to the .243 and kind of fell by the wayside. There could potentially be a few different things that caused the .243 to do better than the .244. Perhaps the rifle that it came out in, perhaps better marketing, but it seems to be that the main thing was the twist rate. Like I said, both cartridges were a dual-purpose cartridge for varmints and deer. With the .243, Winchester was thinking of, a 70-80 grain bullet, something like that, for varmints, and then a 100 grain bullet for deer. And Remington was thinking a similar varmint bullet, but maybe a 90 grain deer bullet, which they felt like was plenty. And so Remington put the .244 Remington with a 1 in 12 twist, and Winchester's version, the .243, had a 1 in 10 twist. And so simply one cartridge was not really able to shoot a 100 grain bullet consistently. And sometimes the public just speaks. With their wallets, they chose the .243. They just liked having the ability to shoot a 100 grain bullet. So it seems like that slower twist rate on the .244 Remington was the nail in its coffin. But now, was that .244 Remington a bad cartridge? Not at all. And in fact, I'm going to talk about it today. It's actually a great cartridge, well designed, and perhaps, even though I'm a huge fan of the .243, perhaps it beats the .243 in a lot of ways. Now, before I do a deep dive into these cartridges, let me just say that in 1963, Remington, with their new Model 700, reintroduced the cartridge, the .244, with a new twist rate. Kind of learned their lesson, and they actually skipped ahead of the .243 and gave it a 1 in 9 twist. And they actually decided to call it something different, and they called it the 6mm Remington. But the damage, it seems, was already done, and it never was as popular as the .243. But we're going to compare these cartridges, the .243 Winchester, the 6mm Remington, and let's also add in there the 6mm Creedmoor, which is kind of a newer version of a 6mm, based, obviously, neck down from the 6.5 Creedmoor. Let's take these three and do a comparison. So first of all, which one of these three can you get the most velocity out of? Well, it's not the .243 and it's not the 6mm Creedmoor. It actually is the 6mm Remington, simply because it has a bigger case. So if you take, say, a 95 or 100 grain bullet and you stick it in the cartridge to SAAMI specs, how much case capacity in H2O do you have in the three cartridges? In the 6mm Creedmoor, you have 47.7 grains of water. In the .243, you've got 50, a little bit of a bump there. In the 6mm Remington, you've got 51.8. So it can hold almost 2 grains more powder than the .243, and a decent amount more than the Creedmoor. So for the hand loaders out there, if you take that 6mm Remington, you might even push the bullet out just a little bit further, kind of seat it out there, and you try different powders out and you find a good powder that will have good case fill and be ideal for the application that you're using it for, you can get more velocity out of it than the Creedmoor or the 243, simply because it has more case capacity. Now, all three of these cartridges are designed for short actions. The 243, its max cartridge overall length is 2.710. The 6mm Creedmoor is 2.80, and the 6mm Remington is 2.825. Now, we know with the Creedmoor that bullet is just seated out much further, even though the case itself is shorter than the 243. Well, that 6mm Remington not only has more case capacity, but also has a longer overall length by a little bit. However, the bullet won't be seated out as far. So in certain circumstances, depending on your magazine length, you might not be able to seat the bullet out as far as you would want to. But now, if you look at some modern cartridges that are short action, like the 6.5 PRC or the 6.8 Western, they're just under 3 inches, yet still fit in a short action. So our modern day rifles with a little bit longer magazines in the short action would actually suit the 6mm Remington really well. All right, so it has more room for powder. It's going to go a little bit faster. But what about pressure? We definitely know that some older cartridges just don't have the max pressure that some of the newer ones do. There are some exceptions, of course. Now, we know back in 1925, the 270 had 65,000 PSI, but most cartridges did not. They were in the 50s up to around 60,000, maybe a little bit above. But one of those cartridges, like the 270, was the 6mm Remington. It does have 65,000 PSI max pressure, compared to 62,000 with the Creedmoor and 60,000 with the 243. More case capacity, higher pressure, but we're not talking about some big magnum here. This is still, just little incremental steps up, not really adding much recoil. You probably couldn't tell the difference in recoil. So it is kind of a nice boost that this 6mm Remington has. So when they took the 7x57 and they necked it down to the 6mm Remington, they changed a few things. From the base to the shoulder, it's just slightly longer than the 7 Mauser, but the neck is slightly shorter than the 7 Mauser. The big difference is the overall cartridge length is over 3 inches with the 7x57, and like I said, it's cut down to 2.825 with the 6mm Remington. The 7 Mauser is truly an intermediate length cartridge. It's perfect for those old Mausers that were intermediate length actions, right in between a short and long. But the 6mm fits nicely in a short action. But one other change that they made was they gave it a 26-degree shoulder angle versus the 20 that the 7 Mauser had. So like the 7 Mauser, the 243 also has a 20-degree shoulder angle, and of course the 6mm Creedmoor has a 30-degree. So it's kind of right in the middle, but I think it was a good call from the designers to, modernize that shoulder just a little bit and make it a little bit more steeper of a shoulder angle. Now, one interesting thing about the 6mm Remington is it has a really long neck. So the 243's neck length is 0.241, the 6mm is 0.351, and the Creedmoor is 0.269. Now, a good rule to go by is you want the length of the neck to be about the caliber. So something around 0.243 is fine, like what they have on the 243. But that long neck is a pretty cool feature for longer bullets. The longer, heavier bullets, it has more room to stay in the neck and not be seated way back in the case, taking up case capacity. So even though the Creedmoor was designed to seat that bullet way out and not take up case capacity, in a little different way, the Remington could also do that, just having a longer neck. So just comparing it to the 243 again, it's got a steeper shoulder angle, it has a higher max pressure, holds more powder, has a longer neck, fits good in a short action, and especially with our modern day short actions, it fits really good. Really, in every way, it kind of beats the 243. Now, I'm a huge fan of the 243, and the thing about the 243 is it's still really, really good. And if you have a 243, there's no reason to want to change. I'm a big fan myself. The 243 just seems to defy all odds and beat every opponent that it faces. It beat the 6mm Remington, and even the very popular 6.5 Creedmoor neck down to 6mm, which I think is an amazing design cartridge. It is really nice, a very efficient cartridge. It did not share the same popularity as the 6.5 Creedmoor, and it has not knocked off the 243, not even close. And so if you're looking for availability, definitely stick with the 243. You can get so many more rifles. In fact, there's almost no rifles chambered for the 6mm Remington. You might find a few here or there. You can still find some ammo, and you will be able to find some brass and obviously dies and things. It's not an obsolete cartridge, but when it comes to availability, the 243 wins hands down. And it's a good cartridge. But just from a design aspect and just from a performance aspect, I think the 6mm Remington is better than the 243. I do think, even though they had kind of already lost the PR battle or the marketing battle, I do think it was very wise to rename the cartridge the 6mm Remington. It was very wise to take the twist rate down to 1 in 9. I just think overall, it's an excellent and very underrated cartridge. Now I understand the 243 has seen some revisions as well. All your Savages are 1 in 9 1/4 twist rate. And I've even heard of some 1 in 8 243s coming out. And of course all your Creedmoors are in 1 in 8 as well. If you're looking to buy a 6mm rifle cartridge and you want to be able to find all the ammo, components, rifles, all that kind of stuff easily, go with the 243. If you love to hand load, or you are looking to build a custom rifle and you're wanting something that's light on recoil and you want something a little bit different that not everyone else has, I would go with the 6mm Remington. On any list of underrated cartridges, I think the 6mm Remington should be on that list. It's a very good cartridge. I've enjoyed talking about it. If you've enjoyed this video, would you please give it a thumbs up? Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Share this video if you think it's worth sharing. Comment below, do you have a 6mm Remington? What's your experience with it? Have you loaded for it? Have you hunted with it? Love to hear all about it. Hopefully you have a great day, and until next time, take care.